Technical difficulties, folks. Technical difficulties. Blah. Good morning, folks. Happy Saturday or whenever this video comes out. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels. We're going to that horrible world known as the JRC. But first, something got brought to my attention this morning, and I would like to address it. Deep within the deep buffoonery, delusions, whatever else might be wrong with the Amber Heard stands, one of these individuals decided that they were going to have the cojones to call any critique of Dr. Spiegel, or as I like to call him, Dr. Gollum, as ableist. Funny. I find it amusing that you want to claim that for a multitude of reasons, but let's just get started with the obvious here. At no point in time during the entirety or the trial or after has it ever been made clear that Dr. Spiegel suffers from any form of disability or mental health issue. The reason he's gotten lambasted by the internet is for two reasons. Allow me to elaborate for you. First off, you have a licensed doctor. Sorry, allergy. You got a licensed doctor making a diagnosis on an individual, not based on actual in-person clinic, actual diagnostic setting, but off of fictional characters this individual was playing. Number two, it is beyond against professional ethics, aka we also have the Goldwater rule, for you to make such a diagnosis without the consent of the individual that you are diagnosing. This person came up with a diagnosis based on fictional characters that in no way, shape, or form exist or have ever existed in this world. Doctor, you do realize that actors help create and form their characters. You're making a diagnosis off of fiction. Means this person doesn't exist, has never existed, and more than likely will never exist, except maybe on some parallel dimension out there. Okay? You cannot form a diagnosis about a person based off the acting roles that they have played. I mean, you might as well say that you've made a diagnosis of me by maybe simply just watching a play I might have sang in elementary school. Okay? It's literally that level of stupid. That's number one. Number two, these individuals are hypocrites. Absolute, complete, utter hypocrites. They have done nothing but from day one used ableist slurs against Depp. They've used ableist slurs. They have shamed him for his disabilities. They shame him for the clothes he wears. They shame him for how he stems. They shame him for his vocal stems. Literally shame him every single day. Every day for his neurodiverse traits. And now you're going to go act like you're the hero of disability rights? Sit down. Sit down. because you have literally used ableist tropes to paint him as the abuser because he's weird. Listing off neurodiverse traits. I've sat here and watched you do it. And now all of a sudden you want to sit down around and point a finger? Really? Really? Cute. Real cute. What you do to him, the names you call him, how you tear into literally every single thing about him, in particular, highlighting all his neurodiverse traits as a reason to malign him and paint him as the abuser as though it's some form of proof. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the height of ableism. You want to know what isn't ableism? Judging someone off of their actions. Okay? No one is criticizing Dr. Spiegel for having a mental health issue or a disability. What they're critiquing him of is being an embarrassment to the mental health field. Making diagnoses off of fictional characters and trying to pin it on a living person is a joke. Number two, they are also pointing out his very bizarre behavior on the stand. Now, I don't know if he has mental health issues or a disability or not, but that is something that Miss Turd's team should have known, and if it were so, should have disclosed immediately. I don't mean that as a form of saying that should in any way discredit this individual. I mean that as a way to say that it also provides a shield of protection around us. It's why I disclose at every job before I take the job my diagnosis. So then I am able to be shielded by the ADA and the Disability Bill of Rights. Okay? It's not ableist to criticize someone who's gone completely against the laws of his own profession. It is not ableist to criticize an individual who's trying to pin a diagnosis on an individual who never gave consent for said doctor to do so. Nor is it ableist in any way, shape, or form to point out how absolutely ridiculous it is to try to pin a diagnosis on an individual based off of literally fictional characters that they helped develop. Because I don't know if you've ever gotten the memo, but Hollywood actors are not the fictional characters that they portray. Okay? Seriously. You don't get to slap us with ableism when you are maligning Depp every single day and using his neurodiverse traits as a means to paint him to be the devil. You don't get to sit there and basically show those videos and show those texts as a means to shame him when, considering he was being abused horrifically, just suffered a loss and got some more bad news. He had the very obvious and predictable meltdown, as many of us do. And at least he has more control over his than I do over mine. He had the presence of mind to GTFO. Not all of us do. Sit down. You have no idea what you're talking about, and you don't have one leg to stand on. Not one. Not one. I also find it interesting because I got into an argument with one of these individuals who tried to discredit me as an expert. And they did so because I didn't agree with their insanity. Now, according to them, only the experts who side with AH are credible. It's a crock, folks. It's a crock. Sit down. You have no idea what you're talking about. All right. Now to the disclaimers, because quite frankly, I'm tired of having these arguments. It's been over a year. Move on with your lives. God. And quit finding your ways onto RTLs. I have major, massive fights against giants on my hands in regards to the disabilities movement, not to mention the fight I have on my hands from my own state. I don't have time to sit there and teach you like you're a 5-year-old the facts of life. Y'all are at the very least teenagers. Go pick up a book, dig your head out of your own butt crack, and educate yourselves. You don't get to create your own facts just because you don't like reality. Period. God. Sorry, but it bugs me. Because now that we're not constantly chirping on this all the time anymore, and most of us have moved on, they're still coming after us. There are other fights to be had right now. If they put half the energy they did into defending that little neurotypical privileged liar into actual things happening to real women right now, like the overturn of Roe versus Wade, maybe we might actually get somewhere. Now to the disclaimers. In the description box, folks, you're going to find a link to the article that the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center doesn't want you to read. It's written by NeuroClastic, a small non-for-profit started by autistics for autistics, wherein they interviewed and surveyed over 900 ABA professionals in regards to the JRC's so-called behavior modification program. Matter of fact, the JRC doesn't want you to read this article so much, they have threatened NeuroClastic with a defamation lawsuit if they did not remove it from the website. NeuroClastic has refused, so you know the drill, folks. Please read that article and share it on all your social media. Also linked in there is NeuroClastic's public statement in regards to the defamation lawsuit threat, as well as a link to their GoFundMe. We are crowdfunding, folks, in case the JRC actually sees through with their threat. Also linked in there, you're going to see the article to the Ozarks. You're going to see the article from Ozarks first, in regards to the Agape boarding school, now known as Stone for Help boarding school situation. This is a so-called Christian-themed boarding school based out of Stockton, Missouri that takes in so-called troubled male teens that has impending over 21 civil lawsuits, claims, and allegations leveled against it, all which have been substantiated by the Missouri Department of Social Services, and they include the following: sodomy, rape, sexual assault, child abuse, psychological and emotional abuse, child trafficking, starvation, and that's just for starters. You have one former staff member arrested by the FBI, another, a doctor, still on the premises with full access of the boys up on multiple, again, substantiated claims of sodomy, rape, and sexual assault of the boys there. You have an attorney general too busy trying to defund libraries and failing. Thankfully, they overturned that whole defunding the libraries thing. One small victory. And chasing after drag queens to actually protect the kids out here. And you've got a governor who's just right off his nuts and help. Please read that article and share it on all your social media. We got the other pertinent links to the Stop the Shocks campaign, including Autistic Hoya's massive archive on the subject, Jennifer Masumba's behavioral sheet of shockable offenses, A clip out of the 7-hour ordeal undergone by Andre McCollins back in 2002, and the ever-present self-explanatory Change.org Shut the Judge Rotenberg Center Down petition. When we discuss the JRC, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips of surveillance footage of peoples with disabilities being tortured and abused. If you got young children present, please use your headphones, all right? This channel is marked not for children for a reason. We use profanity on occasion when we speak on dark subjects. If your child is 16 and younger and they are watching this, very obviously parental supervision is advised. Trigger warning, we are about to once more descend into the mad ravings of the lunatic mind known as Dr. Matthew Israel. You're going to hear gaslighting, victim blaming, pseudoscience, lies, abuse and torture apologencia, all coming from a man with a massive ego and an even larger God complex. So everyone, pause this video, get your calming tea, because we are about to read some more arrogant, full, chest-pounding, fake back-patting bunch of condescending stupid, okay? This is why I'm addicted to kava. You gotta have help with the stupid somehow. All right, so where we left off, the National Disability Rights Network and TASH have outlined a wide variety of best practices used throughout the United States, demonstrating the realistic options exist for treatment of the most severe disabilities. Serious deficiencies may exist in the United States regarding the availability of these services, and parents may rightfully be desperate to find appropriate treatment for children. The lack of services, however, is a product of a lack of funding and planning, not because such alternatives are impossible to provide. In particular, I would like to point out, because these are the areas that the JRC likes to prey upon, in the communities that are for the poor and have a large majority of people of color, have an abysmal lack of available services for disabled people and people with mental health issues. This is actually a particular subject I have been literally fighting since 2006. Places like the JRC prey on such parents because there is such a lack of any other alternatives. But let's see what kind of smoke the JRC is going to try to blow up our ass today. This statement acknowledges the fact that there is a lack of effective services for some students, but incorrectly attributes all cases to lack of funding and planning, and most importantly suggests no solution. Dude, are you on crack? Just the statement provides a solution. Allow me to elaborate for you. For those services that are made available through public funding, do you know where the GOP takes the majority of their funds out of every time they do their damn tax cuts? Let me make it very clear for you. As an individual who used to work for my state and am very, very aware of the effect that it has on the disabled individuals that are no longer able to be served because more money was just taken out. When you have a poor community who either has no services or the few services that they do have are so small with so little funding that they only can serve a very small population, things such as priority become concerns. Those most at risk, or as you would call, the worst case situations. And it's going to be the antithesis of your argument. These are the individuals that you, sir, would call the most severe who get priority. Many people like me, during that time, because lack of funds, get services removed from us because we're considered less of a risk. I know this, doctor, because it's happened to me. It's happened to many of my friends. It has happened in states all over this country repeatedly for over the last decade. Private institutions do not have the same issues with funding that state departments and programs who are funded through Medicaid do. Because you all don't have a cap. No government official can step in and take all that money out to make it to where you have to prioritize the certain cases over others. So what does that mean, doctor? Figure it out. The lack of effective services is not due to the lack of effectiveness of the services themselves. Because the numbers are there, doctor, whether you like it or not. Your cookie cutter way of doing things can never work on the large scale, which is why it's not being implemented by anybody else but you. Everybody else outside of your psychosphere understands the fact that autism treatment and any developmental disability treatment cannot be cookie cutter and has got to be catered to the individual that is being served. The JRC parents come to JRC for help because they are tired of being told that nothing can be done to save their child. First off, doctor, nobody's saying that. I'm going to check your butt right here. As an individual who worked with the state and several of the providers out in my state, the reason kids are being denied is not because we're sitting there and saying that nothing can be done to save their child. Let me check you here. First off, there's nothing to save them from. Except you. Our disabilities are not life-threatening. I'm not going to die from the autisms. I may die from ableist bastards like you, but not the autism in and of itself. It's not a terminal disease. You get what I'm saying here? It's not a terminal disease. I'm not going to die from it. Therefore, if I'm not going to die from it, what am I being saved from? But I can save you and make you neurotypical. I'd rather be shot. I'd rather be shot. Sorry. Hypothetical positive-only treatment procedures that are argued to be effective for students with severe behavior disabilities and admittedly do not in reality exist or the present time will do nothing to help a parent whose child, for example, is out of his or adult teeth, regardless of whether or not those procedures are characterized as best practices or realistic options. You arrogance on you. First off, doctor, you're wrong. And you're lying. Again. First of all, these are not hypothetical services, sir. They exist out in the real world, and they are being used right now all over the place. Places like ARC have been using them for over 3 decades, successfully, I might add. And please don't argue with me. They don't handle people as severe as we do. A service provider that has literally seen over the decades millions of people. And your one argument, but they can't be as severe. They just can't be. They are, doctor. They are. I know because I've seen them. I've spoken with them. I've spoken with their parents. I've acted as a consultant and a resource, for these individuals. Guess what, doctor? Those plans that you're calling hypothetical? I've seen them practically applied to such severe situations. Yes, of them pulling their teeth out or biting and throwing and spitting out chunks of themselves. I've seen it, and I've seen it work. You want to know why, doctor? Because the doctors put in the work. They get to the root cause. They put in the solutions necessary without torturing the kid for simply existing. I hate to bust your bubble, but there's not just files and papers written on this. There's also surveillance footage of this as well. Okay? Spare me. You keep insisting that nothing can help these children but torture. And kind of just like the stands, no amount of cold, hard evidence put in front of your face is going to convince you otherwise. You're just like the abusive parents who refuse to admit that anything else could work. Only what your ways will work, and anybody else who believes any different, whether it's backed by evidence or not, are just wrong. Isn't that right, doctor? You don't want to listen to alternative means. You have blatantly stated in your statement that is supposedly refutes the New York report that you don't even know what positive reinforcement intervention is, nor how it is employed, nor what the results are, or what the data to back it up is. Because you don't want to know. You don't want to know the data behind person-centered planning. You don't want to know the other programs out there. Because then you might have to actually admit what you really are. The 21st century version of Joseph Mengele. I said what I said. You're not saving these kids, doctor. You're crippling them for life. These other treatments aren't hypothetical. They are practical. They are well used and have been for, as the time that this was reported, a good decade. Person-centered planning had been put in place and being rolled out in states all over the U.S. a good 2 years since then. And the data was coming in every day. And guess what, doctor? It has been wildly successful. That's what can happen when you don't try to go for the quick fix and you choose to live in reality. You're not saving those kids, doctor. Okay? The only thing that you are saving them from is having a fulfilling life. Okay? It's infuriating to me when this dude just continues to sit there and say, but this is the only way, no matter what evidence you put in front of him. And I guarantee that was part of the reason why the decision was made to yank his licenses from him. When they yanked those licenses away, should have been the very moment they closed that school down. Because when they had his licenses yanked, that completely discredited the entirety of the system that he used those degrees to build. And we're going to close out on that, folks. We don't get very many views on this channel. The few that we do tend to get removed from time to time. So please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time. And as always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea do hope you have a good one. See you next vid.